The phone rang at 3:47 p.m. Eisenhower picked it up, listened, said nothing. George Patton, the man he'd protected, restrained, defended, and sometimes hated, was dead. For 3 years, Eisenhower had bitten his tongue. Every press conference, every meeting with Churchill, every angry cable from Washington, he'd measured every word about Patton like a man defusing a bomb. Now Patton was gone, and what Eisenhower said next would have ended his career if he'd said it during the war. He called Patton indispensable, not valuable, not effective, indispensable. That word means one thing: without him we might have lost. Here's what Eisenhower really thought, and why he couldn't say it until Patton was in the ground. Camp Meade, 1919, 2 captains, grease-stained uniforms, tearing apart tank engines until midnight. Patton was old money, polo ponies, family estates, already a combat hero from Mexico and France. Eisenhower was a Kansas farm boy who'd spent the entire World War training troops in Pennsylvania. Never fired a shot. They shouldn't have been friends. But they shared something nobody else understood. Tanks would change everything, not as support vehicles, as weapons of decision. Fast, mobile, devastating. The Army brass told them to shut up, threatened their careers, said tanks were a fad. Patton, with his family fortune, could afford to keep pushing. Eisenhower needed his paycheck. He learned to keep quiet. 23 years later, Eisenhower commanded every Allied soldier in Europe. Patton commanded the most feared army in the American arsenal. The friendship survived. But now Eisenhower had to manage the man who'd once been his equal. And Patton never forgave him for it. Sicily, August 1943. Patton walked into a field hospital. Saw a soldier shaking, crying, no visible wounds. What happened next nearly destroyed both their careers. Patton slapped him, called him a coward, threatened to shoot him on the spot. He did it again a week later. Different hospital, different soldier. Same rage, word got out. Journalists knew, politicians demanded blood. The American public was furious. Eisenhower faced an impossible choice. Fire Patton, lose the only general who could move fast enough to win the battles ahead. Keep him, face a political firestorm that could cost Eisenhower his own command. Here's what Eisenhower did, and why it reveals everything about their relationship. He reprimanded Patton publicly, made him apologize to the soldiers, the doctors, the entire Seventh Army, gave the politicians just enough to calm down. Then he protected Patton privately. Why? Because Eisenhower was already planning D-Day, and he knew he couldn't do it without Patton. In Sicily, Patton had raced across the island while Montgomery crawled. The Germans learned something terrifying. They couldn't predict where Patton would strike next. Eisenhower saved Patton's career, then spent the next year apologizing for him to Roosevelt, Churchill, and Marshall. Worth it? He'd find out soon enough. Spring 1944, D-Day approaching. Eisenhower needed the Germans to believe the invasion would hit Calais, not Normandy. His secret weapon? George Patton. German intelligence was obsessed with Patton. They tracked his every movement, studied his tactics, considered him the most dangerous Allied commander alive. So Eisenhower used that fear. He put Patton in command of a fake army, inflatable tanks, plywood landing craft, fake radio traffic, all pointing at Calais. Patton gave speeches, inspected phantom units, posed for German reconnaissance planes. And the Germans bought it completely. They kept entire divisions at Calais for weeks after D-Day, waiting for Patton's real invasion. Thousands of Allied lives saved, by a deception built on one man's terrifying reputation. But Patton was humiliated. He wanted to be in the first wave at Normandy. He wanted to fight. Instead, he was playing actor for an army that didn't exist. Eisenhower couldn't tell him the truth, that his reputation was more valuable than his presence. That fear of Patton was winning battles before they started. Patton never fully forgave him, but Eisenhower knew exactly what he was doing. August 1st, 1944, Patton's Third Army finally went operational. What happened next was the most spectacular military advance in modern history. In 30 days, the Third Army moved further and faster than any comparable force ever had. Hundreds of towns liberated, tens of thousands of Germans captured or destroyed. The enemy couldn't establish defensive lines before Patton smashed through them. He called Eisenhower constantly, "Give me fuel, give me ammunition, I'll be in Berlin in 2 weeks." Eisenhower would explain, "Other armies need supplies too." Political consideration, Soviet agreements, occupation zones. Patton didn't care about any of it. He saw the German army collapsing and wanted to finish them now. Every day of delay was wasted opportunity. And here's what Eisenhower could never admit publicly. Sometimes he agreed. In private, he'd ask his staff, what would Patton do? Not because Patton was always right, but because Patton saw opportunities where everyone else saw obstacles. Eisenhower held him back anyway, diverted supplies to Montgomery from Market Garden, which failed spectacularly. Patton was furious, called it the greatest military blunder of the war. Their relationship, already strained, nearly shattered. Then came December 16, 1944, the Ardennes Forest. The Germans launched a massive surprise attack, the Battle of the Bulge. American lines collapsed, entire units surrounded. For the first time since D-Day, the Allies faced actual defeat. Eisenhower called an emergency meeting at Verdun. His commanders gathered, grim-faced, talking about defensive positions and waiting for reinforcements. Then Eisenhower turned to Patton. "George, how long to attack?" The room went silent. Patton's Third Army was 90 degrees away from the Bulge, engaged in different operations. To help, he'd have to pivot his entire force. 3 divisions, tens of thousands of men, hundreds of tanks, through winter weather into the German flank. Most commanders would need weeks. Patton pulled out a small notebook. He'd already war-gamed this scenario on the train. December 22nd, 3 divisions, 72 hours. Other generals thought he was insane. Eisenhower looked at him for a long moment. Make it so. On December 22nd, exactly when promised, Patton's Third Army slammed into the German southern flank. The attack broke the offensive, saved Bastogne, turned potential disaster into Allied victory. This was the moment. Every controversy, every apology, every time Eisenhower had defended or restrained Patton, all of it paid off in 72 hours. Because when everything fell apart, Eisenhower turned to one man, and that man delivered what nobody else could. After Patton died, Eisenhower's mask cracked. In private letters, in conversations with staff, in moments documented by those around him. He said Patton achieved results through sheer willpower, something that couldn't be taught or replicated. He admitted that restraining Patton had been politically necessary, not militarily wise, that some of those decisions haunted him. He said Patton thrived in chaos, the exact conditions where other commanders froze. And in his memoirs, years later, he used that word, indispensable. Not valuable, not effective, irreplaceable. It meant the outcome would have been different without him. Eisenhower had spent 3 years managing genius, protecting Patton from himself, balancing his value against his controversies, apologizing for him while depending on him. Only after Patton was gone could he finally tell the truth. America lost more than a general on December 21st, 1945. It lost someone who made impossible things happen through pure force of will. Someone who thrived when everything was falling apart. Someone Eisenhower needed and could never publicly admit he needed. Until it was too late. Was Eisenhower right to hold Patton back? Or should he have let him run? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want more untold truths from history's greatest rivalries, subscribe now. See you next time.